They subjected her to brutal punishment until her bones came apart. But she still wouldn't talk, and what she did next will leave you speechless. This is the real story of Anne Askew, possibly the only woman ever tortured in the Tower of London. By the end of this video, you'll understand why her final words changed history forever. Picture this. It's 1546. You're a 25-year-old woman in Tudor England. You've just been sentenced to one of the most brutal devices ever created, the rack. Your crime? Refusing to give up the names of your friends. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. Anne Askew wasn't just any woman. She was connected to the Queen's inner circle. She had secrets that could topple the most powerful people in England, and the authorities were desperate to break her. But why was she so dangerous? What did she know that terrified the king's men so much they'd break their own rules to torture her? Anne was born into wealth and privilege around 1521. But here's what made her different. She could read. And in Tudor England, a woman who could read the Bible was basically holding a loaded weapon. Anne didn't just read the Bible, she memorized it. She could quote scripture for hours. And she used this knowledge to challenge the most powerful religious authorities of her time. But it gets better. At 19, Anne was forced to marry Thomas Hume, a Catholic man chosen by her father. And here's where the story takes a bold turn. Anne was a hardcore Protestant. She believed their marriage was invalid because he wasn't a true believer. So what did she do? She left him. In the 1540s, England, women didn't leave their husbands. It was a social disgrace. But Anne didn't care. She packed up, moved to London, and started the most dangerous career possible for a woman in Tudor England. She became a preacher. London in the 1540s was a powder keg. There were deadly clashes between Catholic and Protestant factions. And Anne? She walked right into the middle of it. She started holding secret meetings, distributing banned books, teaching women to read scripture. And here's the remarkable part. She was connecting with ladies in Queen Catherine Parr's inner circle. This is where things get really dangerous. The conservative Catholic faction at court, led by Bishop Stephen Gardiner, were hunting for Protestant heretics. And Anne? She was their perfect target. In 1545, they arrested her. The charge? Heresy. The penalty? Death by burning. But Anne was brilliant. When they asked her about her beliefs, she gave answers so carefully crafted that they couldn't technically convict her. She was playing 4D chess with the most powerful religious authorities in England. They had to let her go. But here's what they didn't expect. Anne didn't stay quiet. She did the one thing that guaranteed they'd come for her again. She started writing. She wrote detailed accounts of her arrest and interrogation. She wrote theological treatises, and she distributed them throughout London's Protestant underground. She was basically trolling the authorities in the 16th century. By June 1546, they'd had enough. This time, when they arrested her, they weren't planning to let her go. They took her to the Tower of London. Here's where this story becomes absolutely brutal. Content warning. This next part is intense. When Anne refused to name her associates, they made a decision that shocked even hardened Tudor officials. They decided to torture her on the rack. Here's why this was unprecedented. Women of Anne's social class were never tortured. It simply wasn't done. The fact that they broke this rule shows how desperately they wanted her information. The rack was designed to do one thing: pull your body apart until your joints separated. Sir Anthony Kingston, the Constable of the Tower, personally supervised Anne's torture. Chancellor Richard Rich was there too. These weren't random guards. These were high-ranking officials. As they stretched her body, as her joints tore apart, as she screamed in agony, Anne Askew refused to talk. Somehow, while being tortured in the Tower of London, Anne managed to smuggle out a written account of what was happening to her. Think about that. She was being tortured, her bones were being pulled apart, and she was still writing, still documenting, still fighting back. This woman was absolutely unstoppable. After hours of torture, her interrogators realized something terrifying. Anne Askew was never going to break. They'd failed, completely. Anne had protected every single one of her associates. She'd given them nothing useful. But now they had a problem. They'd tortured a gentlewoman. They'd broken their own rules, and they had nothing to show for it. So they made the only choice they could. They decided to execute her. If they couldn't break her, they'd make her an example. July 16th, 1546. Smithfield, London's traditional site for burning heretics. Because of the torture, Anne couldn't walk, so they carried her to the stake in a chair. Thousands of people came to watch. Her case had become the talk of London. Even at the stake, facing death by fire, they offered her one last chance to recant, to save herself, to give up her beliefs. Anne looked at her executioners, looked at the crowd, and refused. But it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Witnesses reported that she showed no fear. She appeared to pray silently as the flames rose. Even her enemies were impressed by her composure. When we talk about Anne Askew's last words, it's not like she gave some big dramatic speech. It was more about her silent strength. Even as she faced the fire, she just wouldn't back down from her beliefs. She stayed calm and prayed, showing everyone she was completely dedicated to her faith. Anne's execution backfired spectacularly. Instead of discouraging Protestant reformers, it inspired them. Her writings, which had been smuggled out of prison, spread like wildfire throughout England. Just months after her execution, the young Protestant Edward VI became king. Anne's torture and death became a symbol of the previous regime's cruelty. It helped fuel the Protestant Reformation in England. But the most incredible part, Anne Askew proved that ideas are more powerful than torture, that courage is more powerful than fear. That one woman with unbreakable conviction could inspire a movement that would reshape a nation. Her impact extended far beyond religious reform. By publicly challenging both religious and civil authorities as an educated woman, Anne helped establish precedents for women's intellectual and spiritual autonomy that would echo through centuries of social change. The very fact that the Tudor establishment felt compelled to break their own protocols to torture her reveals how threatening educated, articulate women had become to traditional power structures. Perhaps most significantly, Anne's refusal to implicate Queen Catherine Parr and her circle may have saved the English Reformation itself. Had she broken under torture and provided evidence against the Queen, Henry VIII's last wife might have faced the same fate as Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. Instead, Catherine Parr survived to influence the young Edward VI's Protestant education, ensuring the continuation of religious reform that Anne died defending. Anne wasn't the only woman to face execution under Henry VIII's brutal reign. Her story is just one chapter in a much bloodier book. Discover the others.